chapter 4, it says, and Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bare Cain, and have said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. This is not talking about a different event. Or the only lapse of time right here is the 9 months. When God just got done talking to her and said, I'll put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed, shall bruise his head, bruise thy heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow you shall bring forth children. Boom, you go right over to 4, and Adam knew his wife, and they just saying what happened in 3. And I have gotten a man from the Lord, she conceived and bare Cain. This is when she conceived. Cain came out first. Abel came out second. It was the same pregnancy. They were fraternal twins. Why? Because they both had sex with Eve. It was a menage a trois in the Bible right there in the beginning. Now, don't be surprised, because there's a whole bunch of messed up sex all over the Bible. As a matter of fact, that's one of the occult rituals, is that you have sex with a lot of people. And they do everything because sex is a blood covenant. That's why when you have sex with a woman for the first time, she's supposed to bleed, and that's supposed to be her issue of blood. Read Exodus and you'll find that to be true. And her bleeding was actually the token that proves that she was a virgin. But that's for a different study. That's a study on marriage that we'll do later. Now, in chapter 4, she conceived Cain, and again bare his brother. Again means in continuation, and that's the same pregnancy. Now, in the process of time, it came to pass when Cain brought the fruit of the ground as an offering unto the Lord. The process of time was 100 years. Where do you find that? In the rest of the Bible. You have to read the rest of the Bible. It's actually in the New Testament. I'll give you that much. So, in the process of time, it came to pass, Cain brought the fruit of the ground, an offering unto the Lord. Now listen to this. Verse 4. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. See, the fat is not like we think it is, like the part that you cut off that you don't want, the fat part that made grease. That's not it. When they talk about the fat in the Bible, that fat is the actual part that you're going to eat. The rest of it was extra. The fat that they talk about in the Bible is the part that you are going to eat. So listen what it says though, because everybody tries to mix this up too and say that Cain didn't bring the best of his. Yes, he did. Because the Bible says right here, in the process of time it came, Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. So Cain right here still acknowledges that there is a God, and the God is over him and his dad. Why? Because that God kicked his dad out of heaven in the first place. That God created his dad in the first place. That God named him Lucifer, a light bearer, and he made him and created him with all different stuff and to be perfect in beauty. So Cain is acknowledging that there's a God that's higher than Lucifer by bringing an offering to him in the first place. But verse 4 tells how Cain and what Cain brought. And Abel, he also brought of the firstling. It wouldn't say also if Cain didn't bring the best of the grains that he had. And this wasn't an offering for sin. This was just an offering. Had it been an offering for sin, Cain would have had to bring something and kill it and use blood. Because the cleansing of the blood is what redeems. He had to have pure blood. It wasn't an offering for sin. This was just an offering. This was an offering of sacrifice of the first fruits. Because it says right here, and he brought of the fruit of the ground an offering, and Abel also brought the fruit of the firstlings of his flock. And if you know how they bring their first fruits, they always do it off of the first. So, off of their first harvest. So, they had to be taught that by somebody also. Who were they taught that by? They were taught that by their parents. So now they understood all of the processes that they had to go through. You had to sacrifice and offer back to God before it was written. So, the Bible was actually written, and the commandments were actually being told from the beginning of the Bible, when he said, be fruitful and multiply, subdue, have dominion. All of that, if Adam would have written it down, that would have been like the first words in the Bible. Okay, now let's keep going. Abel, verse 4, and Abel, he also brought of the firstlings. So stop saying Cain didn't bring it, because there would be no need to have that word also in the Bible right there. All it would have said was Cain brought of the first fruits of the ground of the offering unto the Lord, and Abel brought the firstlings of his. But it would have had but Abel brought the firstlings of his flock. But it didn't have but, it has also. So also he brought of the firstlings of his flock. So Cain brought the best. But the Bible says that his countenance fell, and God had not respect to it because he didn't want to bring it. He didn't bring it in faith. He didn't bring it cheerfully and willingly. He brought it because, man, we got to bring this up to God. Man, he taking all the best of my stuff, and all he gonna do is just burn it up. So what's the sense of even, I can eat that. You see what I'm saying? But in the process of time, in this 100 years, Adam and Eve, were still having kids. But they were having daughters, because when they had males, the males were mentioned in the Bible. Now, that's where Cain found his wife from. And Cain took one of his sisters as his wife and went east of Eden to the land of Nod. Then he built the city and named it after his son Enoch. Now, that's where Cain's family comes from. Now listen to this. People always try to say that, no, there was other men, and there was other man created, and there was another race living before Cain and Abel was made. They were blacks and browns and yellows or whatever, and Cain and Abel were white. You're totally wrong. You can trace back in the Bible where most of the people in the Bible were black. I mean, if you go to the New Testament in Acts, the eunuch was coming from Ethiopia when he was reading the Bible that he had then, and Paul showed up and he was like, hey, do you understand this? And he was like, no, how can I understand unless not Paul, I'm sorry, like Philip showed up and explained to him what it was, and then he got baptized right away after he believed. After he believed, he got baptized. So he was coming from Queen Candace of Ethiopia, black. I mean, when Joseph and Mary had to go hide Christ, they went to Egypt. Where would you go? You would go to where you blend in at. You wouldn't go somewhere where you just stood out like a sore thumb. And matter of fact, at the same time, all the curses in the Bible were basically curses to turn your skin white. I mean, leprosy was the curse in the Bible, and it turned your skin white. Angels are spiritual beings. So if angels would have sex with a human being that was dark, it would make them light. I mean, and then wherever you move on whatever region you live in, if it's colder, your skin is going to adjust to the pigmentation in your skin. So where does everybody come from? Everybody comes from Adam and Eve. Why? Because everything was wiped out. Enoch went to heaven. Noah and his family stayed on the ark. So those 8 people were saved. Boom. Now, which brings you back to people talking about that there were people here before. There was nobody else here before Adam and Eve, or else you would have to take Genesis 3 and 20 out of the Bible, because then Eve is not really the mother of all living. And it can't mean all living meaning the people that are going to go to heaven, or the people that's going to get a chance to go to heaven, or just the Jews only. It can't mean that, because it says the mother of all living, and she's the one that bore Cain. And Cain slew his brother. Cain was a murderer, so he wasn't getting into heaven. Lucifer was his father anyway, so she can't be the mother of all living in that pretense, because she bore Cain. There couldn't have been anybody else. This is another reason why. Because this right here is where the bloodline was tainted. And this is why the Bible says that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Because you get the sins from the Father in the Father's bloodline. That's why the sin of the world of mankind is not blamed on the woman. It's blamed on the man. Because you get his seed, and then the sins come down through her. She can't produce a child on her own, neither can a man. But the man provides the seed that has to fertilize the egg. She's the incubator, she's the holder of the child, and then the child is produced. But you are passed through your father's bloodline. That's why the whole rest of the Bible talks about the men in the bloodline. It doesn't really say, and this woman, they came from this woman. It says they came from this man, because you have to know who the father is of people in order to know their background or where they come from or whatever, what their habits might be or what their family structure did, because families aren't like they are now, where the woman is the caretaker in most homes now. So Eve is the mother of all living. If there was other men, then there would be a way for some people not to have sin in their life. But the Bible says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But the Bible also calls people perfect. Noah was perfect. Job was perfect. Joseph was perfect. Daniel was perfect. It's more people that were perfect in the Bible. So you have to go with what the Bible says. The Bible says they were perfect. The Bible tells us to be perfect all the time. So don't say that you can't be perfect, because you can. Because the Bible instructs you to. And God said that people were perfect. So, and it wasn't just talking about their bloodline, because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God because of the bloodline. So you can't use that when you're talking about that. I don't know how people get that